When you go for a drive in the car, you put your seatbelt on, right? Oh, well, at least I do. Why shouldn't you have a seatbelt for your finances? Stay tuned and we're going to talk about that today. Hey, Frank Thomas here from Wealth Generation Strategies. I was reading a really spooky article today. It was talking about the fact that 53% of Canadians are insolvent. In other words, they're broke. They have no money. They're like $200 away from just losing it all. That is really scary, more than half the population. Today, I'm going to be offering you some hope though. I've talked about emergency funds in other videos, but what we're going to do is we're going to expand a bit on that. Inside the emergency fund, I'm going to be talking about 3 different levels of an emergency fund that you can build and why you'd build them, what it's going to do to protect you. Plus, near the end, the bonus is going to be talking about if you put these pieces in place, what it's going to get you. And you want to hear about that. So stay tuned and let's get going into this. So an emergency fund, if you watch one of my previous videos, I talk about an emergency fund, and an emergency fund is exactly what it sounds like. It's there for drop dead emergencies. The car blows up and you need to put a new alternator in the car. You got the money, it's there. You don't have to use Mr. Credit Card, funds you don't have, or dive into your savings. You've got funds already allocated, put aside for that emergency. Or let's say something else happens in life. You are working away and then your boss comes up to you and says, geez, I'm really sorry, but the company's downsizing and I gotta let you go. Here's your pink slip, have a nice life. What do? If that happened to you and you're on the verge of insolvency or bankruptcy, you're in big trouble. You go from being okay one day to being possibly homeless the next. So what are we going to do? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to save $1,000. That is, if you haven't got any savings whatsoever, before you save a dime or pay any debt off, you put $1,000 away and you put it into an account that is a little harder to reach. I purposely, in Canada, I use EQ Bank. It's standard online bank. It's like any other bank, and that's where I put the money because it gives you about a 3% return. It's not great, but it's better than most banks. The idea is I'm taking a little bit of cash and I'm making it just a little further away to touch. That's the whole idea of it. You want to make sure that that money is accessible, but not too accessible because you don't want to use it for something that is not an emergency. First level is we want to basically keep Murphy away from your door. You've heard of Murphy's Law. What could happen will happen at the worst possible time. It's kind of funny. The minute that I put away $1,000 into an emergency fund, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of things that were always breaking on me just stopped breaking. I honestly can't explain it. It's almost like now that I had the funds, it wasn't such a big deal. Now, I've had things break. I've had to use my emergency fund. I had broken my stove by accident and it cost me about $2,000 to fix it, but I had the money there. And I had this great freedom to know that, hey, the money's there. But I tell you something, I always thought, why would I put $4,000 or $5,000 into an account that has such a poor rate of return when I can put the money into stocks, ETFs, exchange traded funds, and earn 10% or 15% or better? Why would I do that? Well, here's why. Once you put your funds into your long-term savings, you don't want to ever take them out. And this has got nothing to do with the money or the return. This is kind of a mind job thing. You want to separate that money off and have money there in a larger amount, and here's why. I used to think, as I mentioned earlier, having $4,000 or $5,000 or more sitting in an account that's earning such poor interest was silly. You know, why would I ever do that? Here's why you do it. In my video, which I'm going to link at the end of the video here, which talks about when things go horribly wrong, I quit a contract because I wasn't happy where I was at. I was out of work for 4 months, so I had to cover my own expenses for 4 months. It was partially by choice, partially by circumstance, but I knew that I had the finances in place. I had them in my business. I didn't have it in my emergency fund. In retrospect, I should have had them in my emergency fund in the long term. Once you got that first $1,000 saved up, that's awesome. You've protected yourself against those little emergencies that just could crop up, and you don't have to worry about using Mr. MasterCard or Mr. Visa to handle that emergency. But the next thing you want to do is get to level 2 of your emergency fund. and that is having $5,000 or the equivalent of 1 month's living expenses put away into your emergency fund. That way, now you're not a paycheck away from being bankrupt. You're a month away. That gives you a little bit of comfort and a little bit of freedom. The idea here is you want to make it so your emergency fund is a little larger. It's still there for emergencies that could crop up. If you blow a tire on the highway, you got the money to fix it, and you replace that money as soon as you can. But that second level, at that 1 month of expenses, I just chose $5,000. Our expenses are a little higher than that every month, and yours could be a little bit lower. But let's say $5,000 is your monthly expenses. That's your drop dead, must get paid expenses every month. You want to do that, you want to save that. And that gives you immediately a whole new level of protection and freedom to be able to know that you're okay if the boss walks up to you and says, oh, by the way, you don't have a job here anymore. You know that you can cover yourself for at least a month. Now we're going to get into level 3, is you want to save between 3 and 6 months into your emergency fund. And I would say 3 months minimum. So if it was $5,000 for 1 month, you're going to be saving $15,000 for 3 months. What that will do is give you a lot of peace of mind. You can have a big emergency happen. It's not really such a big deal because the money's there. If you get laid off, you have money there to cover you until you can get another job that you'd like to take. Remember, this is only for emergencies. Now, how do we get to there? We get to there paycheck by paycheck. If you're employed right now, take a little bit of money. I take about $400 or $500 every month out of my full budget, and I allot it to my emergency fund. And it's a line item in my budget. You have a budget, right? Right? Okay, I hope you got a budget. You need a budget if you haven't got one. You make it a line item in your budget. So what happens is you automatically just put away to it, and you make sure it's not an onerous amount because you still want to be able to save. Once you've saved that first 1,000, you got that first level, you still want to, at this point, save, pay debts off, and save towards your long-term retirement. You want to do both those things. So you have to make room for 3 things here. Yes, if you're a little tight, I understand that. If you had to make a choice between putting away into your emergency fund and long-term savings, I would say put it into your emergency fund. It is more important for the short term. What can happen is as you fund your emergency fund, you can always transfer it into your long term if you so desire in the future. The idea here is we want to make a regular monthly or paycheck by paycheck contribution into it. That way we slowly raise it. Every year I put about a month's worth of expenses into my emergency fund. So it's not like I'm putting a whole bunch of money in there quick like a bunny. I know that emergencies are not going to crop up every day. And I try to plan for any expenses that are coming up in my budget already. So emergencies are not such a big problem, but I do also know that it takes time for that to build up. The funds that I had put aside for my big emergency in the earlier part of this year were sitting in my business. I did a whole bunch of work and a whole bunch of extra business. So I had a lot of money sitting there, and that became my emergency fund at the last minute. It was a little irregular, but it had the same idea. That's how we fund it. Before we get into our bonus, I'm just going to say, if you're getting value out of this video, give it a like. And I'd love to hear your comments. I've gotten some really great comments on different videos within this channel with your suggestions, your tips, and I love seeing them. So please comment. Let's get into our bonus here. I would say once you've saved up at least 3 to 6 months, anything beyond this really should not be saved in a savings account. You want to secure this into a higher rate of return vehicle, like a good investment account. There's Questrade, there's Wealthsimple, there's in the States, in all the countries, there's lots of really great investment vehicles you can use or investment firms you can use. If you so desire, you can find an investment broker at a bank if that's the route you want to take. How much hands-on or hands-off is up to you. But you want to get that money earning more than, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5%. The interest rate at the end of the day really makes a big difference. Finally, what you're going to find is once you've put that money away, you're going to have a tremendous feeling of freedom, and that's what you're shooting for here. You want the freedom to find that next best thing that you want to get involved in, that next best gig or job or whatever it is. It gives you that financial freedom to choose something better and just not choose whatever comes along. It really sucks when you haven't got any money and you got to just take whatever comes. That really sucks. I'm going to be blunt with you. I've done that and it's not nice. But when you have that buffer, that cushion of 3 to 6 months, what happens is now you can look at a position and go, hey, I don't really like that one. I'm going to wait. I'm going to pass. And I did pass on many positions before I accepted the one I'm in right now. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're still watching, I'm going to link the video that talks about when things go really, really bad. I mean, really bad. You got to watch that one and it'll help fill in some of the details for this video. Thanks a lot. This is Frank Thomas. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.